Chapter 1366. What is this? She picked it up and looked at it for a while. She saw that there seemed to be something transparent at the end of the black tube. The servant girl smiled and said, "This servant has never seen such a rare item before. I only heard that this thing is called something like a clairvoyance. If you put it on your eyes, it is said that you can see very far away." Cheng Mingyue sneered. Such a magical thing? Although she didn't believe it, she still picked it up and looked at it in front of her eyes. She was really surprised when she saw it. It really could see very far away. Although Cheng Mingyue was from a prominent family, she had never seen such a rare item before. She took it and looked around. When the servant girl saw that her young miss finally smiled, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. She was responsible for taking care of young Mississippi. If young miss continued to be unhappy, she was afraid that old master would vent his anger on her servants. Cheng Mingyue did not have the mood to care about the servant girl's thoughts. She felt that it was very novel. The scenery of those distant places magically appeared in front of her eyes. When she moved the thing away, only the scenery in front of her was left. She immediately forgot about the sadness that Juyu had brought her, and put all her attention on her new toy. But when her gaze suddenly landed on a place, the smile on her face froze. In that small courtyard, a man and woman were hugging each other, and sitting on the swing. Why did they look so familiar? Cheng Mingyue thought that she had seen wrongly. But when she looked at the two of them seriously, she felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over her head. She was completely cold. That man in green who was smiling gently at the woman on top of him. Wasn't that her senior brother Juyu? No wonder he rejected her father's proposal. He actually liked someone else. Cheng Mingyue only felt annoyed. She wanted to throw the thing in her hand away. Out of sight, out of mind. It was not that she was unwilling. How could she be willing if she did not look at that woman's face? The two of them were hugging each other, and seemed to be having a very intimate conversation. From Cheng Mingyue's point of view, the woman in white was facing her from the side, so she couldn't see the woman's face clearly. She only felt a sense of familiarity. Who was it? She actually snatched away her senior brother. Cheng Mingyue's heart was burning with anger, but her face was cold. She wanted to take a good look and see who exactly that woman was. At this moment, Juyu turned his head and kissed the girl's ear. The girl couldn't stand the ticklish feeling and smiled as she turned her head to avoid it. The woman's face happened to appear in Cheng Mingyue's line of sight. Clang! Cheng Mingyue was shocked. The thing in her hand loosened and fell to the ground. Aya! The maidservant who had been serving her quickly bent down to pick up the things. However, the main material of the clairvoyance, the transparent material called glass, was smashed into pieces by Cheng Mingyue. Cheng Mingyue wanted to take another look at it to confirm if she had seen wrongly, but she found that it had been completed and could no longer be used. She angrily threw the thing in her hand to the ground. When she came back to her senses, she saw the young servant girl looking at her nervously. She felt even more annoyed. He raised his hand and slapped her. "What are you looking at?" Scram. Chapter 1367. The maidservant packed up her things, covered her face, and retreated, leaving Cheng Mingyue alone in the small building. She had seen it clearly just now. She wanted to confirm it again because she was unwilling to accept it. With that woman's appearance and grace, anyone who saw her once would never forget her. Cheng Mingyue saw it clearly. The woman who was sitting in eldest senior brother's arms and smiling happily was the demon sex master, whom she had seen once. Why did that woman appear in Liangzhou City? But that was not important. The key was her and eldest senior brother? Cheng Mingyue could not understand why eldest senior brother would rather like a demoness from the demon sect than her, his junior sister who grew up with him and was of equal social status. Could it really be because of her devastatingly beautiful face? Thinking of the demon sex master's face, Cheng Mingyue had to admit that she was no match for her, no matter how unwilling she was. Eldest senior brother must have been bewitched by that woman after he lost his memory. Cheng Mingyue comforted herself. She could not let eldest senior brother continue to be deceived by that woman. Cheng Mingyue sat by the window of the small building and looked in that direction stubbornly. It was as if she could still see the intimate appearance of the man and woman in the courtyard. Cheng Mingyue's lips curled into a cold smile. Demon Sex Master, if we were at Mount Wudu, I would not have been able to do anything to you. But you insisted on seeking death, and came to the martial arts world of the Central Plains alone to Liangzhou City. Then don't blame me for being impolite. She got up, hurriedly put on a cloak, and walked out. At the same time, in the small courtyard, Gu Xingyin felt that something was wrong. What's wrong? Zhu Yu sharply sensed her emotions. Gu Xingyin frowned. I felt that someone was watching us just now. Zhu Yu laughed. Don't think too much. With our abilities, there is no one in this world who can spy on us without being discovered, right? Gu Xingyin thought about it and agreed, so she did not think too much about it. Zhu Yu stayed there until lunchtime and then left. He was different now, so it was inevitable that someone would follow him. Being able to spend an entire morning here without being discovered was already the limit of what he could do. After Zhu Yu left, Gu Xingyin asked the system, "What happened just now?" Her prediction just now was definitely not an illusion. It was impossible for an expert of her level to have such a strong illusion. As expected, the system gave her the answer. It's her. After knowing who it was, Gu Xingyin was relieved. Let me guess. Given Fairy Mingyu's righteous image, she will definitely be prepared to get rid of demons and defend justice after knowing that I, the cult master of the demon cult, have appeared in the headquarters of the Central Plains. Gu Xingyin rested his chin on his hand and thought for a moment. System, do you think she'll find a group of assassins to deal with me silently? Or will she leak my whereabouts and let the entire Central Plains martial arts world come to deal with me? The system's white light flashed, and it answered seriously, Host, according to the system's calculations, based on the character of the target, Cheng Mingyu, it is more likely that she will directly take your life. Gu Xingyin smiled brightly. What a coincidence. I think so too. Her tone was relaxed, as if she did not feel that being targeted was a bad thing. Chapter 1368. Gu Xingyin lived in a small courtyard. Occasionally, she would disguise herself and walk around Liangzhou City. She had no choice. Her face was too eye-catching. If she didn't disguise herself, she would definitely be noticed. She was afraid that she would get into trouble. Gu Xingyin wasn't afraid of anyone, but she was afraid of trouble. Therefore, she would rather go out with a little trouble. On this day, she carried 2 jars of good wine and packed some of the most famous dishes in Liangzhou City. She planned to drink to her heart's content at night. When she entered the door, Gu Xingyin paused for a moment. She then closed the door of the small courtyard without changing her breathing, and slowly walked towards the only stone table in the courtyard. Just as she was about to put the things on the table, a black shadow quietly approached her from behind. The masked man's eyes flashed fiercely. The dagger in his hand mercilessly stabbed toward Gu Xingyin's back. This time it was obvious that he wanted to kill her. However, if she was killed like this, Gu Xingyin's title as the leader of the demon sect would be in vain. The assassin did not even see the other party's movements clearly. He felt his hand go numb, and the dagger in his hand fell to the ground. Then, there was a bright light imprinted in his eyes. That was the last ray of light he saw in this world. Gu Xingyin didn't look at the assassin on the ground. Dead people were never worth her attention. 2 more gusts of wind came from behind. Gu Xingyin didn't seem to notice. She was stabbed. The eyes of the assassin on the right flashed with joy. When he thought of the generous reward from his employer, his heart surged. However, in the next moment, he felt that something was wrong. The dagger in his hand seemed to have stabbed into a thick steel wall. It didn't go in at all. By the time he wanted to retreat, it was already too late. A pair of hands had already silently grabbed his wrist. 2 more figures fell down. Gu Xingyin didn't plan to let him live at all. Most of the people in Jianghu who took money for their lives didn't know who their customers were. Even if they knew something, Gu Xingyin didn't care. That was no longer important. After all, Gu Xingyin already knew who the mastermind was. Naturally, there was no need for these people to exist. The small courtyard was completely silent. Only the smell of blood and the 3 corpses on the ground indicated that something had happened here. Gu Xingyin sneered in a low voice. You only sent 3 of them to assassinate me? She really doesn't put the dignified demon cult's leader in her eyes, does she? As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Xingyin sensed an aura moving in the middle of the courtyard. Come out. She looked at her room indifferently. There was no movement. Gu Xingyin's voice grew colder. What? Do you need me to personally invite you out? The door creaked, and a black figure rushed out at an extremely fast speed. Looking at his clothes, it was obvious that he was the same group of people as the black-clothed assassins. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and knew that this person was the main force of this assassination. This person had the most profound internal strength among the 4 assassins. However, this person didn't have the intention to attack Gu Xingyin. Or it could be said that after knowing Gu Xingyin's identity, he didn't have the intention to go against her. Gu Xingyin looked at him with a smile. Suddenly, she had a wonderful idea. Chapter 1369. Gu Xingyin asked the black-clothed figure standing quietly by her side. Do you want to live or die? If someone else had said this, the black-clothed figure might have said that this person was arrogant. But the person who said this was the demon sex master, who had challenged countless experts of the Central Plains with a single sword strike without losing a single one. The black-clothed figure could only admit that the other party had the ability to decide his life or death in an instant. Even though the assassin profession had always licked blood from the edge of the blade, there was no one who didn't cherish their own life. Gu Xingyin was very satisfied to hear the expected answer. I want to live. This was the good thing about assassins. They wouldn't talk nonsense with you. They would only tell you what they wanted in the most straightforward way. Very good, Gu Xingyin said. Then use your own life to make a deal with this venerable one. Her lips moved, and the black-clothed figure's body trembled. In the end, he could only hoarsely agree. Gu Xingyin waved her hand, indicating that he could leave. Just as the black-clothed figure was about to leave, he heard Gu Xingyin shout, "Wait a moment." His body stiffened, afraid that this person would change her mind again. He heard Gu Xingyin say, "Remember to take them away. Don't dirty this venerable one's place." The black-clothed figure hurriedly agreed as if he had been pardoned. The small courtyard fell silent once more. Gu Xingyin turned her head to look at the small courtyard. Although it looked very clean, when she thought about how 3 people had died here not long ago, she instantly lost the mood to eat and drink. For people like her, everything she did depended on her mood. Gu Xingyin expressed that her impression of Cheng Mingyue had worsened, because Cheng Mingyue had ruined her mood for drinking. The system silently lit a candle for a certain character target. The next day, Gu Xingyin, who was drinking in a tea house, heard a rumor. Hey, did you know? Fairy Mingyue encountered an assassin last night. Fairy Mingyue? Who would hate Fairy Mingyue so much? Who knows? The conversation in the tea house was in full swing. Gu Xingyin listened quietly. The gist of the news was that a group of people had infiltrated the Cheng family last night, preparing to assassinate the Cheng family's eldest daughter, Cheng Mingyue. Fortunately, Old Master Cheng had arrived in time. In the end, although the assassin was forced to retreat, Old Master Cheng's old illness was triggered, and the heat poison in his body could no longer be suppressed. Gu Xingyin hid the smile at the corner of his mouth. Heat poison? The only antidote he knew was the frigid pond snow lotus. As for the cold pond snow lotus, it had already been fed to the Wulin Alliance chief, Zhu Yu, by the devil cult's cult master. In other words, there was no cure for Old Master Cheng Zhen this time. Shopkeeper, the bill please. Gu Xingyin shouted and placed an ingot of silver on the table. All right. Gu Xingyin slowly walked out. Cheng Mingyue, this time, your father had saved you from disaster. What about the next time? Gu Xingyin did not feel guilty for involving Cheng Zhen. Cheng Zhen was not a good person either. He had done those things in the dark for the Cheng family's benefit, and he had even caused the downfall of those small families. Even if he died, he deserved it. When Gu Xingyin returned to the small courtyard, she saw Zhu Yu sitting there. There was a cup of tea beside his hand, but it was no longer warm. It was obvious that he had been here for quite some time. When he saw Gu Xingyin, his expression became serious. Chapter 1370. Gu Xingyin closed the door behind him, removed the disguise on his face, and sat beside him. What happened to you? She asked. Zhu Yu looked at Gu Xingyin and felt his throat dry up. Do you know what happened to the Cheng family? Gu Xingyin's expression turned serious when he heard that. She looked at Zhu Yu and wondered why he was here. Was he here to question her? Or did he have other intentions? She thought for a while and decided not to use all sorts of bad conjectures on her lover. She nodded. I know. Moreover, I was the one who sent the assassins to the Cheng family. After saying that, she looked at Zhu Yu. She wanted to know how Zhu Yu would react at a time like this. When Zhu Yu heard Gu Xingyin's words, the first thing he said was, Did my junior sister do something wrong? Gu Xingyin finally smiled. When he heard that she sent the assassins to kill, his first reaction was not to suspect her, but to question others. What was she thinking about when she met such a man? She said, Yesterday during the day, a group of killers came to my small courtyard. I left 3 people alive and 1 alive. Looking at Zhu Yu's worried expression, Gu Xingyin comforted him. I'm fine. Then she said, As for the remaining one, I told him to use his life in exchange for the life of the person who wants to take my life. She spread out her hands innocently. I didn't know that this person would be your junior sister, Fairy Mingyu. When she called Fairy Mingyu, her voice was full of mockery. The moon was bright and clear in the sky, cold and pure. How could she be worthy of this name? Zhu Yu's serious expression finally relaxed. He lifted his hand and felt Gu Xingyin's pulse. This man was probably the only one in the world who could make the leader of the demon cult obediently let his pulse be held and not resist. Zhu Yu only felt relieved after he personally checked that this person was fine. After hearing about the Cheng family, Zhu Yu did not know why, but the first thing she thought of was Gu Xingyin. He didn't know why he was so sure that this matter had something to do with Gu Xingyin. However, he wasn't suspecting her. Instead, he was wondering how his junior sister had offended her. Based on her understanding of Gu Xingyin, she was not the kind of person who would kill for no reason. That was why he asked that question when he came here. Gu Xingyin looked at him and suddenly said, Zhu Yu, on your account, I will not pursue this matter with her this time. If there is a next time. Her eyes flashed with killing intent. Then, she felt her hand being held by a pair of warm hands. You don't have to do it on my account, Yi Li. Zhu Yu looked at her seriously. No one is more important than you. Junior sister Cheng's actions shouldn't be forgiven. You can't forgive me, and neither can I. He couldn't forgive anyone who intended to harm this person in front of him. Something seemed to flash in Gu Xingyin's eyes. She smiled and said, I'll take your words seriously. Don't think that after you regain your memory, you'll be reminded of your relationship with your childhood sweetheart, and you won't be able to bear to part with it. Zhu Yu smiled and shook his head. I won't. If there is anything more important to me than you in this world, I won't forget it. There won't be such a situation. Chapter 1371. Bang! Cheng Mingyue didn't know how many tea sets had been broken in her room. Her personal maid stood outside the room with her shoulders shrunk. She didn't dare to provoke her mistress at this moment. Since the master was assassinated and the doctor said there was nothing he could do, her mistress became very moody. Cheng Mingyue was very nervous now. She knew who those assassins were after. Their target was her. Her father, on the other hand, had used his true qi for her sake, which had triggered his old injury. Those assassins. Cheng Mingyue still felt scared when she thought about it. That cold and emotionless gaze, that chilling dagger, was just a hair's breadth away from piercing into her heart. Her martial arts skills, which she was proud of, were simply vulnerable in front of them. Those assassins were after revenge. Because before they killed her they said, Miss Cheng, why didn't you tell us the identity of the other party when you hired us? That assassin was really angry in his heart. Even if they were assassins, their lives were valuable. Assassinating the hierarch of the devil cult was a suicide mission. If Cheng Mingyue had told them Gu Xingyin's identity at that time, they wouldn't have taken the job anyway. Not to mention that it was impossible to complete the mission. They would have offended a big shot for no reason. This woman didn't care about their lives at all. This was the most important reason why Cheng Mingyue didn't dare to tell them Gu Xingyin's identity at this moment. If they knew that the target was the hierarch of the devil cult, No assassin organization would dare to take the job no matter how much money she offered. But now, Cheng Mingyue was not afraid of these assassins, but of the hierarch of the devil cult. Did she know about it now? Cheng Mingyue couldn't help but shudder when she recalled the way that woman had looked at her from above, and the mysterious means she had used to deal with her. That woman was definitely not a person who repaid evil with good. If she knew that she had hired someone to assassinate her, she would never let her go. But now? Her father, the only one who could protect her in the Cheng family, was lying in bed in a coma. If that woman came to make trouble for her, the Cheng family alone couldn't stop her. Cheng Mingyue bit her lip so hard that it bled. Her expression was indescribably gloomy. Master of the devil cult, every man for himself. Since you and I are already mortal enemies, don't blame me for being ruthless. She tidied herself up, and when she went out again, she looked no different from before. When the servant girl at the door saw that Miss had returned to normal, she heaved a sigh of relief. Xiao Tang, clean up this place and accompany me on a trip. Yes, Mississippi. A female guest, who was shrouded in a curtain, arrived at the largest intelligence building in Liangzhou City. The receptionist wasn't surprised to see this. People who came here usually didn't have any honorable intentions, and these people were usually unwilling to let others know their identities. However, they did not know that if the information pavilion wanted to know their identities, it would not take much effort. When the mysterious guest saw the receptionist, he immediately took out a money bag. The receptionist at the information pavilion noticed that this guest had a pair of very beautiful hands. I need you to help me spread a message about the things inside. She opened the money pouch in her hand and poured out the contents, a whole pouch of money. Gold. Chapter 1372. The eyes of the person in charge of the information pavilion narrowed when he saw so much gold. Even for him, it was rare to see such a large sum of money. However, he didn't reach out to take it. Instead, he asked, "What do you want us to do, miss?" In their line of work, the biggest taboo was to be short-sighted. When they saw money, they didn't care about anything else. Some gold and silver. Even if you got it, you still had to be alive to spend it. Cheng Mingyue was a little nervous. She was afraid that the other party would be like those assassin organizations, and not take the job. However, she had no other choice. In the end, she opened her mouth and told him what she wanted to do. The person in charge of the information pavilion opened his mouth, and looked at the person in front of him who was wrapped tightly. Who was this person? How dare he provoke the demon sex leader? No, the point was, the demon sex leader was in Liangzhou City? He thought for a while, and asked Cheng Mingyue to sit here and wait for a while. He also prepared tea and snacks. Honorable guest, please wait for a moment. I can't make the decision. Let our pavilion master talk to you in detail. Cheng Mingyue nodded. Soon, a handsome young man in white holding a folding fan walked over under the guidance of the person in charge. He had a handsome face and the corners of his lips were slightly raised. His appearance was not inferior to that of eldest senior brother Zhu Yu. She had never heard of such a person before. Cheng Mingyue glanced at the man. She wasn't a little girl who just came out of the martial arts world. Naturally, she knew that this was not his true appearance. The person in charge left after bringing the man here. Miss, do you want to touch that person? The man in white smiled and pointed to the west. The headquarters of the demon sect, Mount Wudu, was in that direction. Cheng Mingyue was a little nervous, but her tone was cold and arrogant. Why? Is there a problem? No, there's no problem. The man in white didn't seem to think that the demon sect that everyone in Jianghu feared was very powerful. This made Cheng Mingyue's heart calm down. She said, "Then our deal is done?" With a snap, the man in white closed his fan. He stared at Cheng Mingyue, his gaze seemingly able to pierce through the layer of cloth and see through her entire person. Esteemed guest, this price is not worth the risk of offending the demonic sect. The man in white was still smiling. Cheng Mingyue gritted her teeth. Then how much will it take for you to do it? The man in white stretched out 2 fingers with a smile. Cheng Mingyue looked at him in confusion. She didn't understand what he meant. Seeing this, the man in white said, "Double." He pointed at the gold ingots scattered on the table. His meaning was self-evident. Cheng Mingyue's voice sharpened. Twice. You guys are crazy. I just want you to spread the news. The man in white didn't get angry when he saw her like this. He only said a few words lightly. But this news is related to the cult master of the demonic sect who defeated all the top-notch masters of the martial arts world of the Central Plains. This humble one can guarantee that apart from this humble one, there is no other clan that would dare to accept the mission of our esteemed guest. Cheng Mingyue's momentum suddenly weakened. She knew that he was telling the truth. Can't be less? She was a little unwilling to give up. Such a large sum of money was not easy for her. The man in white shook his head. Not a penny less. Chapter 1373. In the end, Cheng Mingyue paid the money. After she was done with this matter, she returned to the Cheng mansion with satisfaction. In her plan, the entire Liangzhou city would know that the demon sect leader, Wu Yeli, had come to Liangzhou city and that she was up to no good. Needless to say, rumors could easily spread to her desired effect. Cheng Mingyue knew this very well. She only needed to reveal the demon sect leader's address tomorrow or the day after. By then, if a few more accidents happened, countless people in the martial arts world would go against the demon sect leader in the name of eliminating the evil. Cheng Mingyue was very familiar with such methods. However, she did not know that not long after she left the information pavilion, an inconspicuous figure entered the martial union. Zhu Yu looked at the secret letter in his hand with a gloomy expression. He didn't remember what happened before, but his previous subordinates didn't know about it, so they reported important things to him as usual. He said in a low voice, "Find out the identity of the person who entrusted the mission." The subordinate was shocked. "Chief, this is against the rules." His unfinished words were silenced under Zhu Yu's cold gaze. "Yes, sir." The result was out very quickly. It was his good junior sister, Cheng Mingyue. Zhu Yu looked at the report and did not speak for a long time. He always knew that his junior sister was a narrow-minded person, but he did not expect her to be so vicious. Zhu Yu went directly to the small courtyard where Gu Xingyin was. He showed her the information he had found. Unexpectedly, Zhu Yu did not see any surprise in Gu Xingyin's eyes. "You know about this?" he asked doubtfully. Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I only know that your junior sister has never had any good intentions towards me." She looked at Zhu Yu. "You told me this just like that. Aren't you afraid that I will take revenge on your junior sister?" Zhu Yu looked at her. "I have said this a long time ago. To me, there is nothing more important than you in this world." Even if Gu Xingyin did not pursue the matter with Cheng Mingyue, he did not intend to let it go so easily. Gu Xingyin smiled when he heard that. "All right then, I'll tell you in advance. Don't blame me if I do anything." Zhu Yu only looked at her with a smile. He had placed his entire heart on her, so naturally, no one understood her better than he did. His Yili had never been a malicious person. No matter what happened to Cheng Mingyue, she only had herself to blame. In the end, Gu Xingyin said a few words to Zhu Yu. She wanted to deal with Cheng Mingyue's matter by herself. Zhu Yu was not surprised that she would make such a decision. The demon cult master, Wu Yeli, had never been a woman who only knew how to hide behind others. On the second day, as expected, some news secretly spread throughout Liangzhou city. It was said that the evil cult intended to harm the world of martial artists in the Central Plains, and that their cult master had secretly come to Liangzhou city. While everyone was shocked by the news, another address was spread. It was said to be the place where the demon cult master lived. When Cheng Mingyue heard the news, she smiled slowly. "Wu Yeli, no matter how powerful you are, can you go against the entire world of martial artists in the Central Plains?" Chapter 1374. However, when the group of martial artists from the Central Plains finally arrived at the small courtyard that Gu Xingyin had bought after choosing a day to annihilate the evil path, Gu Xingyin was stunned. They saw Zhu Yu, the leader of the martial arts world, chatting with his master and several other martial arts seniors. Zhu Yu was obviously in a very good mood. When he saw the group of people, he held a wine cup in his hand and smiled. "What's wrong with everyone?" The group of people from the martial arts world were speechless. Seeing the scene in front of them, they were almost certain that they had been fooled. Where was the lair of the devil sect's leader? They didn't see the devil sect's leader, but the leader of the martial arts world was here. The leader of this group of people from the martial arts world was the leader of a medium-sized sect. He had quite a bit of prestige among this group of people. At this time he looked embarrassed, but he was also free and easy. This old man heard a rumor that there was an evildoer from the devil sect hiding here, so I brought my martial arts friends here. Now that I see the leader and the other seniors, I know that I have been fooled. With the leader and the other seniors here, which blind person from the devil sect would dare to come here? His words were beautiful. Not only did he explain the reason for doing so, but he also secretly praised everyone present. Sure enough, after hearing his words, the faces of the seniors who were unhappy because their mood had been disturbed became much better. Mu Qingfeng looked at the group of people from the martial arts world and said, "Today I am in a good mood, so I invited a few old friends to this courtyard that I bought a long time ago for a small gathering. Who would have thought that there would be such a thing?" That person felt cold sweat on his back. All the people here were old seniors who had been famous in the martial arts world for a long time. During their time, he didn't even know what a sword was. He just said that he was going to exterminate the remnants of the devil sect. If these people were the remnants of the devil sect, the martial arts world of the Central Plains would have changed a long time ago. Under the gaze of the older generation of martial arts experts, this group of people hurriedly retreated. Who spread this news? After leaving the courtyard, the leader finally couldn't hold back and scolded. Everyone present looked at each other and didn't say anything. When the sect master saw this scene, he felt a chill in his heart. They were clearly being used by someone with ulterior motives. He said in a low voice, "What happened to the person who said he saw the devil sect's demoness appear in the courtyard?" If it wasn't for the fact that someone had sworn that he had personally seen people from the devil sect entering and exiting the courtyard, he wouldn't have been so rash as to barge in. Naturally, it was impossible for anyone to stand up for such a matter. The sect leader probably knew that if he really wanted to make use of them, they would have run away long ago. Even if they didn't run away, they wouldn't be so stupid as to stand up and admit that they were spreading fake news. "Everyone disperse," he said with a heavy expression. Therefore, in less than 2 days, the news about the demon sect's leader was covered by another joke. This joke was about a group of people in the martial arts world who had heard a rumor from who knew where. They had gathered together to eliminate evil and defend the Tao. In the end, they had bumped into Senior Mu Qingfeng's courtyard door. Who was Senior Mu Qingfeng? Who were the people in his courtyard? However, the old senior was kind and did not make things difficult for these people. In the end, these people returned with their tails between their legs. However, no one knew which busybody actually made a list of these people. They had lost a lot of face this time. Under such circumstances, the group of people gnashed their teeth in hatred towards the culprit who had caused them to become like this. The person who could spread the rumors. 10,000 chapters. Today, Gao Lingji received a recommendation. And it was for PK. If she advanced, it would be a very good position. 10,000 chapters will be posted until Friday. Let's hope she can advance to the next round. Darling, nervous. Please vote for Gao Lingji and leave a message. If you have the conditions, please give her a kiss. Good night, everyone. Chapter 1375. Ha 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 ha. When she heard this, Gu Xingyin was laughing happily in the courtyard. "You're worse than me." Gu Xingyin looked at Zhu Yu with a smile. Zhu Yu only smiled without saying anything. "Tell me, when did you regain your memory?" Gu Xingyin suddenly asked. Zhu Yu was shocked. "How did you know?" Gu Xingyin looked at him. "Why wouldn't I know?" Although Zhu Yu had concealed it well, there were still some differences between this person and his previous appearance. Zhu Yu shook his head. 2 days ago, I was going to give you a surprise. Gu Xingyin pursed her lips and smiled. Then, wouldn't I be letting you down? Zhu Yu looked at her. No, I'm very happy. Even his master couldn't tell that he had regained his memory, but she could. How could he not be happy? Since you already know that I've regained my memory, why don't you come with me to see my master? Zhu Yu suddenly said. Gu Xingyin had no objection to this. Zhu Yu's master, Senior Mu Qingfeng, had already found out from Zhu Yu that she had been in Liangzhou City all this time. This time, it was all thanks to Mu Qingfeng's cooperation that the people in the martial arts world were able to get rid of their objections so quickly. When Mu Qingfeng saw the demon sect's leader again, he had mixed feelings. This was the third time he met Wu Yeli. The first time they met, her talent in martial arts left a deep impression on him. The second time they met, the eccentric personality of the demon sect's leader made him grit his teeth. And the third time they met, Mu Qingfeng could only sigh as he looked at the woman who bowed respectfully to him. He knew very well how arrogant she was. But now, she was willing to come to the martial arts world of the Central Plains alone for his disciple. She even bowed to him. The slight grudge in his heart disappeared just like that. Forget it, he would let the young people make their own decisions. Since Zhu Yu had made his own choice as his master, he would follow his own wishes. Zhu Yu suddenly looked at his master. Master, I have another piece of good news to tell you. Mu Qingfeng looked at his disciple. Zhu Yu told Mu Qingfeng that she had regained her memories. Sure enough, this news was undoubtedly the happiest news for Mu Qingfeng right now. Moreover, it had lifted a heavy burden from his heart. It also made him understand that there was no room for negotiation between his disciple and the cult master of the devil cult. Zhu Yu had always been gentle and reserved since he was young. However, as his master, Zhu Yu knew that his disciple would not make a decision easily. Once he had made up his mind, he would not change it. How is it now? Can you confirm my sincerity? Zhu Yu held Gu Xingyin's hand and asked with a smile. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. When had she ever doubted his sincerity? Does your master know about your junior sister? Gu Xingyin asked. Zhu Yu nodded. Although I didn't say it explicitly, my master has already found out. He looked at Gu Xingyin and seemed to be a little embarrassed. My master means that she is a girl after all. Now that her father's life is unknown, if possible, it is better to leave her some leeway. Gu Xingyin held the golden silk cup in her hand. Her slender fingers rested on it quietly. I will give her a chance. It is none of my business whether she can hold on to it or not. Chapter 1376. When Cheng Mingyue heard the news from outside, she couldn't help but sweep all the things on her dowry onto the floor. Her eyes were faintly bloodshot. Obviously, she hadn't rested well for a few days. However, the reason for her lack of rest was very different from before. 2 days ago, it was because of excitement. In her mind, she had already imagined dozens of possible outcomes for the cult master of the devil cult. He might have to flee with injuries, or he might have to bear the infamy of being condemned by the public. Of course, Cheng Mingyue hoped that the woman would not be able to go back. Only when that woman was dead would she be able to truly rest assured. However, in the short span of a day, this matter had taken a turn that she did not expect. There was no demon sect leader at all. The person living in the courtyard was her master, the martial arts senior Mu Qingfeng. When Cheng Mingyue heard this, her heart turned cold. She didn't expect that her master would side with the demon sect leader. That's right, in Cheng Mingyue's eyes, there was no other possibility. It was as if a string in her mind that had been stretched taut for a long time had suddenly snapped. At this moment, there was nothing but hatred in her mind. That woman was simply a devil. Since she appeared, senior brother ignored her. Now, even master was siding with her. What about her? Her father was now lying in bed unconscious. Her reputation as Fairy Mingyue in the martial arts world had also begun to decline. It was all because of that woman. No, it wasn't just that woman. There was also senior brother Zhu Yu whom she liked, master who had always doted on her, and those people in the martial arts world. These people were all hypocrites. Unconsciously, her eyes became redder and redder. At this moment, a golden glimmer floated in from outside the window. The glimmer was very weak. It was so weak that if one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't notice it at all. That golden glimmer landed on Cheng Mingyue's hair without anyone noticing. Then it disappeared in an instant. Cheng Mingyue frowned slightly. Somehow, she felt that her heart had palpitated a little just now. The next moment, a maid's cries could be heard. Young miss, old master has passed away. What? Cheng Mingyue was in a daze for a moment. Ever since she was born, her mother had passed away, and it was her father who had raised her. Because she didn't like it and he was afraid that she would be wronged, Cheng Zhen didn't even take a second wife. Even though Gu Xingyin didn't approve of Cheng Zhen's character, he had to admit that Cheng Zhen was the best a father could do for his daughter. But at the same time, it was precisely because of his unprincipled doting that Cheng Mingyue developed such a domineering and selfish character. Cheng Zhen was a famous senior in the martial arts world. Almost all the reputable figures in the martial arts world had come to his funeral. Regardless of whether they were sincere or not, at this moment, everyone had to put on a sorrowful expression. For 3 days, Cheng Mingyue knelt in front of her father's memorial tablet. No matter how others comforted her, it was useless. It wasn't until 3 days later that Mu Qingfeng couldn't stand it anymore. If he went down, he was afraid that his little disciple would fall before Cheng Zhen was even buried. He walked to Cheng Mingyue's side and reached out to help her. "Go away. Don't touch me," Cheng Mingyue suddenly exclaimed. Chapter 1377. Not only Mu Qingfeng, but the other guests were also shocked by Cheng Mingyue's sudden emotional outburst. Zhu Yu stood in the crowd and frowned as he looked at Cheng Mingyue. Gu Xingyin didn't come. In her words, she said, "Cheng Zhen, that old man. How can I attend his funeral?" Mu Qingfeng lowered his head and looked at his little disciple. He wasn't angry at her rudeness. He could understand that she had lost her father. It was normal for her to be emotional. But Cheng Mingyue's next words shocked him. After Cheng Mingyue said those words, it was as if she finally had a breakthrough after many days of emotions. She didn't ask anyone to help her and stood up on her own. Because she hadn't stood up for a few days, her body was a little shaky, but there was a strange smile on her face. She looked at Mu Qingfeng and said, "Don't help me. I know that you accepted me as your disciple because of my Cheng family status in the martial arts world. Mu Qingfeng, you hypocrite." As soon as her words came out, the whole hall was in an uproar. Could it be that Mingyu's father's sudden death had caused her to go crazy? When Mu Qingfeng heard such words, his expression calmed down. It was as if his little disciple wasn't talking about him. He opened his mouth and said, "In your heart, has this always been how you see me as your master?" Cheng Mingyue stared at him closely. "Yes, Mu Qingfeng, if it weren't for your former identity as the #1 master in the martial arts world, my status would rise to a higher level if I became your disciple. Do you think I care?" Mu Qingfeng lowered his eyes and suddenly turned around. "Then today, in front of all the martial arts world, this old man will announce that Miss Cheng and I have dissolved our master-disciple relationship. This old man can no longer be Miss Cheng's master." It was hard to tell if he was happy or angry, but everyone felt that Senior Mu Qingfeng was furious this time. The disciple that he raised with his own hands actually said such disgraceful words. Many people felt that if their own disciple was like this, they said that being kicked out of the sect was a light punishment. If her temper was more violent, it was possible that she would be cleaned up. It was just that Mingyu usually looked gentle and generous. No one would have thought that her heart would have such thoughts. There was a lot of discussion in the hall. When these discussions reached Cheng Mingyue's ears, it became everyone mocking her. Mu Qingfeng had already left. When Zhu Yu saw this scene, his face darkened. "Since Miss Cheng is no longer a disciple of my sect, Zhu Yu will take his leave." He lifted his leg and was about to leave. His master was probably sad now, and he was a little worried. "Zhu Yu, stop right there," Cheng Mingyue suddenly shouted when she saw him. Zhu Yu turned around and saw Cheng Mingyue looking at him with a complicated expression. Deep love and extreme hatred could be seen in her eyes. "Zhu Yu, tell me which part of me, Cheng Mingyue, is not worthy of you? I like you so much and I'm always worried about you. Why won't you look at me?" She was very agitated. Zhu Yu said faintly, "Miss Cheng, the relationship between a man and a woman cannot be forced. It's better not to say such words so as to avoid damaging your reputation." Cheng Mingyue sneered. "Reputation?" She stared at Zhu Yu. "I know. Is it because I'm not beautiful enough? I can't compare to that which Wu Yili, so you don't like me." When Zhu Yu saw that she actually dragged Gu Xingyin into it, his expression turned ugly. Chapter 1378. As for the other people in the martial arts world, those who knew who Wu Yili was pricked up their ears to listen. This even involved the demon sex leader? Zhu Yu stared coldly at Cheng Mingyue. Miss Cheng, Zhu Yu has grown up with you and has always treated you like a younger sister. I have never had any thoughts of overstepping my boundaries. This has nothing to do with anyone. Never had any thoughts of overstepping his boundaries. When these words reached Cheng Mingyue's ears, it meant that Zhu Yu had never liked her. She didn't believe it and screamed. I don't believe it. It must be that bitch Wu Yili who bewitched you. You men are all like this. Whenever you see a pretty girl, your soul will fly away. When she said this, many people's faces darkened. Cheng Mingyue's words had scolded everyone. Cheng Mingyue didn't know why, but she knew that once she said these words, her reputation in the martial arts world would be ruined. But she couldn't help it. As long as she saw the hypocritical and disgusting faces of those people, she couldn't help but want to vent all the violence and resentment in her heart. What's wrong with what I said? You men, all I have to do is smile and wave at him, and he'll crawl on me like a dog. He'll bite whoever I ask him to. Cheng Mingyue seemed to have thought of something and started giggling. At this moment, a young swordsman with a sword stood out from the crowd. He looked at Cheng Mingyue with undisguised disgust. I was once one of Fairy Mingyue's admirers. Thank you, Fairy Mingyue, for clearing my doubts today so that I will no longer be a dog in the future. After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands towards the people around him and turned to leave. After this person left, the other young people left one after another. They had all heard that Senior Cheng had passed away and were worried that Fairy Mingyue would be too sad, so they specially came here. But they didn't expect to hear such words. These young people were all hot-blooded men. How could they tolerate such a thing? Zhu Yu looked at the crazy Cheng Mingyue and sighed. He didn't care about Cheng Mingyue's shouts and turned to leave. As Cheng Mingyue watched the martial artists in the morning hall leave one by one, she felt incredibly happy. See, these were the hypocrites. Now that she had hit the nail on the head, one by one, none of them had the face to stay, right? She slowly leaned against her father's coffin and sat down. No one knew what she was thinking. He sat there until the middle of the night. Cheng Mingyue slowly raised her head. She remembered the events of the day. What had she done? Cheng Mingyue could not hide the fear on her face. Her words during the day might have offended most of the people in the Chinese world of martial artists, and she was even chased out of her sect. No. How could he do such a stupid thing? Cheng Mingyue knew very well that she wasn't wronged when she said those words, because those were her truest thoughts. But she would never tell anyone about those flowers. She must have been set up. That person was so vicious that he actually wanted her to lose her footing in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. No. She couldn't do this. She was the high and mighty Fairy Mingyue. How could she be defeated so easily? Chapter 1379. It was currently the wee hours of the morning. Cheng Mingyue's mind raced. She had to think of a way to redeem herself. Once she redeemed her reputation, she would slowly settle the score with that little B***TH. After thinking for a moment, she stood up and took a bronze mirror. Looking at the woman in the mirror with messy hair and bloodshot eyes, Cheng Mingyue's eyes flashed with disgust. This was not her. Cheng Mingyue carefully fetched some water and washed herself. She then changed into a set of plain-colored clothes and did not apply any makeup. Her pale complexion and dark circles were extremely obvious, due to not having rested for several days. Looking at the delicate and pitiful woman in the mirror, Cheng Mingyue nodded her head in satisfaction. Only by looking like this would she be able to arouse the sympathy of others. Under the night sky, Cheng Mingyue knelt in front of Martial Union's main entrance. Zhu Yu had just woken up in the morning when he heard his subordinates report that Cheng Mingyue was kneeling in front of Martial Union's main entrance. She seemed to have come to ask for forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness? A cold glint flashed through Zhu Yu's eyes. After saying such words, would a simple sentence of asking for forgiveness be enough? Zhu Yu did not pay any attention to Cheng Mingyue. Instead, he turned around and went to see his master. Mu Qingfeng's complexion was still ugly. Anyone who knew that they had raised an ingrate would not be in a good mood. When Zhu Yu entered, he just happened to hear his master's angry rebuke. Ask for forgiveness. Tell her to scram. This old man cannot accept her bow. Zhu Yu sighed. It seemed that his master already knew that Cheng Mingyue was outside. He lifted his leg and walked in. Master, please calm down. When Mu Qingfeng saw Zhu Yu, his complexion became slightly better. However, his anger was still visible. You've come. Mu Qingfeng looked at Zhu Yu. You're not here to plead on behalf of that cruel and unscrupulous thing, right? Zhu Yu shook his head. Master, you've underestimated me. Am I, Zhu Yu, a person who cannot differentiate between right and wrong? Mu Qingfeng nodded. She said those words last night. Did she think that today's act would be enough to make up for what she said? Just as she said. She thinks that everyone in Jianghu is a fool. Speaking of this, Mu Qingfeng's anger rose again. Zhu Yu once again comforted his master. Cheng Mingyue knelt in front of Martial Union's main entrance. At this time, the sky was already bright, and the number of people outside gradually increased. Seeing such a beautiful woman in plain clothes kneeling here, it was natural for people to start discussing. Upon receiving the orders from above, Martial Union's guards completely ignored Cheng Mingyue. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, Cheng Mingyue did not panic. She knew very well that in this situation, the weaker she appeared, the more others would sympathize with her. At a time like this, what he needed the most was the sympathy of others. Not long after, there would naturally be people who would have tender feelings for the fairer sex, who would seek justice for her. At that time, as long as he pretended to be sad and remorseful, there would always be people who would believe him. Cheng Mingyue already knew the temperament of these people like the back of her hand. However, no matter how much she calculated, she did not realize how serious the words she said last night were. The men in the martial arts world were indeed protective of the fairer sex. They were also very tolerant towards beauties. However, this did not mean that they were willing to become dogs. Those people were actually looking at the number one beauty in the martial arts world with mocking eyes. They were all wondering what kind of show she was going to put on this time. It was already 2 hours before daybreak. However, there was still no one who came out to speak for Cheng Mingyue. At this time, Cheng Mingyue started to panic. Things seemed to have gone beyond her expectations. Chapter 1380. This was completely different from what she had imagined. In her mind, with such a great beauty like her kneeling here, not to mention 2 hours, even if it took less than an hour, there should be people who couldn't help but come forward to ask about it. She knelt there, feeling a little apprehensive. However, her face still maintained that delicate and pitiful appearance. She refused to believe that she, Cheng Mingyue's charm, was so weak. However, Cheng Mingyue did not notice the ridicule in the eyes of the onlookers as they looked at her. What they were discussing was not the reason for such a great beauty to kneel here, but the shocking words she had said last night. Even if there were 1 or 2 people who did not know the truth and could not bear to look at her, they were pulled away by the people beside them and informed of the matter. After a round of information, the people who originally wanted to save the beauty started looking at Cheng Mingyue with strange expressions. Such a delicate and pitiful beauty actually said such unorthodox and disrespectful words. Indeed, one could not judge a book by its cover. In the martial arts world, seniority was the most important thing. The status of a master and disciple was also extremely important. The words that Cheng Mingyue had said to her master, Mu Qingfeng, yesterday were truly chilling. Another hour passed, and Cheng Mingyue's legs were already numb. Finally, a person appeared at the entrance of Martial Union. It was not her master, nor was it her senior brother. However, Cheng Mingyue recognized that this person was her senior brother's capable assistant. Since he had appeared, did that mean that her senior brother had not completely abandoned her? Cheng Mingyue's eyes suddenly lit up. However, in the next moment, the words that came out of that person's mouth caused Cheng Mingyue's heart to turn cold. Miss Cheng, you are kneeling in front of my Martial Union's entrance so early in the morning. This is not good for my Martial Union's reputation. Please return. That person said coldly with a monotonous tone. In reality, the fact that he did not directly scold her was already an act of self-restraint. Songren had been by Zhu Yu's side for many years. Naturally, he also harbored some unclear thoughts towards this beautiful junior sister of his master. However, he had always known his own identity. He knew that Cheng Mingyue's status was not something he could covet. Hence, he had always bitterly restrained his thoughts. Who would have thought that they, the people who admired Cheng Mingyue, were actually dogs in her heart? Moreover, they had all seen how much Senior Mu Qingfeng cared about this young disciple of his. But in the eyes of this person, it had become a profitable thing to do? He, Songren, must be blind to fall for such a heartless and unscrupulous woman. Thus, under such circumstances, he could only maintain his politeness on the surface, and that was already the most he could do. However, this was not the result Cheng Mingyue wanted at all. She raised her head and her eyes were filled with tears. She bit the corner of her lips and looked very sad. "Brother, my master, he really won't forgive me?" Her swaying posture made it seem as if she would fall if the other party gave her a negative answer. If it was the Songren of the past, his heart would ache to see such an attitude. But now he just watched coldly as Cheng Mingyue put on an act. She even called him Big Brother? He had been by his master's side for so many years. As long as this Miss Cheng had the heart, it was impossible for her to not know his name. He had really been blinded in the past. He actually did not see through this point. Chapter 1381. He stood at the entrance of Martial Union and coldly said, "Senior Mu has already said that Miss Cheng is no longer his disciple. Miss Cheng, don't call him master anymore." Cheng Mingyue's heart turned cold. She knew that sometimes, the attitude of the person serving beside you was an indication of the master's attitude. Looking at this person's appearance, her master and senior brother were really not going to give her any face? Cheng Mingyue only felt a chill in her heart. In any case, they had been master and disciple for more than 10 years. Yet, at this time they could actually bear to see her like this. Cheng Mingyue had never thought about what kind of relationship she had talked about when she pointed at Mu Qingfeng and said those words last night. Thus, it could be said that the selfish people in this world all had the same characteristic. They would always remember the bad things of others, but could not see the good things of others and their own bad things. No matter what kind of thoughts she had in her heart, Cheng Mingyue still put on a pale face on the surface. She gritted her teeth and said, "Since master and senior brother are not willing to forgive Mingyue, and Mingyue has already lost her father, now that I'm going to lose my master and senior brother, what's the point of living in this world?" As she spoke, she acted as if she was going to crash into a stone pillar at the side. "Stop, Miss Cheng." Songren still had that cold look on his face. He looked at Cheng Mingyue, his gaze devoid of any warmth. "If Miss Cheng wants to die, please find another place. If you kill yourself in front of Martial Union's entrance, those who don't know will think that Martial Union is bullying you and do something to you." Cheng Mingyue's body was grabbed by two people. She looked at Songren, who was standing at the entrance, in disbelief. She was already in this state, so why was this man still so indifferent? She could not help but touch her face suspiciously. There was nothing wrong with it. She shouted without care, "You! Why won't you let me see my master and senior brother? What are you trying to do?" "Miss Cheng." Songren's face finally sank. The way he looked at Cheng Mingyue was as if he was looking at something filthy. "Miss Cheng, do you need me to remind you what kind of disrespectful words you said last night in front of all the martial artists?" His gaze was so cold that Cheng Mingyue couldn't help but shudder. Her arrogance unconsciously weakened. That's just because I was too sad and didn't mean it." "Unintentional words?" Songren sneered. "I'm afraid these unintentional words are Miss Cheng's true heartfelt words?" He then instructed his subordinates. "All of you stand guard at the entrance. If Miss Cheng wishes to seek death, stop her. Do not dirty my Martial Union's land. Of course, once Martial Union is out of the picture, it is none of our business." After he finished speaking, he turned around and left with a flick of his sleeves, as if he didn't want to see this repulsive woman again. It was only then that Cheng Mingyue was truly exhausted. Master and senior brother really wouldn't care about him anymore. She had never been so clear about this matter. She turned around and saw the way the crowd looked at her for the first time. What she saw in front of her eyes made her widen her eyes. It was not the sympathetic and pitiful look she thought it was, but the real mockery and sarcasm. These people were all laughing at her. Chapter 1382. Chung Mingyue stared at these people with wide eyes. Among these people, she recognized some of them, but she did not recognize the majority of them. However, these people, without exception, were all looking at her with malicious gazes. Chung Mingyue tried her best to maintain the demeanor of a martial arts family's young miss and coldly said, "Everyone, hitting someone when they're down isn't something a real man would do, right?" It would have been better if she did not say this. The moment these words left her mouth, some people in the crowd sneered. "So Miss Chung also knows what a real man is? I thought Miss Chung didn't even know how to write the word shame." Shame is such a complicated word. How would Miss Chung know? I think she probably doesn't even recognize words like face, right? I heard the words she said last night clearly. If I had such a disciple, I would have cleaned up the sect on the spot. How could I allow her to jump around again today? Isn't that so? She was already expelled from the sect yesterday, and today, she came here acting pitiful as if nothing had happened. She even threatened to kill herself. Miss Chung, let me advise you. If you really want to die, go home and do it. Don't put on an act here. Every sentence was like a sharp knife stabbing into Chung Mingyue's heart. It wasn't like this. Why were these people looking at her with such gazes? Why were they saying such cold and heartless words to her? Shouldn't they be looking at her tears, lamenting in their hearts, and facing a common enemy with her? Chung Mingyue could not bear such gazes. She felt that she could not stay here any longer. She could only cover her face with her sleeves and hurriedly leave. Seeing that there was no more drama to watch, the crowd surrounding the entrance of Martial Arts Union dispersed. Chung Mingyue was secretive all the way home, because she realized that people were pointing at her and whispering to each other on the way home. Chung Mingyue, who had never experienced such humiliation before, only wanted to return home and close the door, not letting anyone see her. However, before she reached home, she saw her personal maid Xiao Tang. Why did Xiao Tang come out? She felt strange. When Xiao Tang saw her, it was as if she saw her savior. "Miss, you're finally back." Chung Mingyue faintly had a bad feeling. "What's wrong?" Xiao Tang's eyes were filled with tears. "Our residence's main doors have all been smashed." Chung Mingyue was infuriated when she heard this. The gate was the face of a mansion. Who had such a huge grudge against the Chung family? Who did it? Xiao Tang's tone was evasive. This servant saw that there were many people. Chung Mingyue glanced at it and didn't say anything. She hurried back home. From afar, she saw the smashed door of her house and many people surrounding it. "Miss, don't go there." Xiao Tang tugged at her sleeve uneasily. Chung Mingyue felt that something was wrong. She turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" Xiao Tang bit her lips and said, "Those people came to cause trouble for young Mississippi." This servant heard them scolding young Miss. Chung Mingyue's heart skipped a beat. What are they cursing about? Xiao Tang's tone became even more cautious. They scolded Miss, deceived their master and betrayed their ancestors, ungrateful pigs, pigs and dogs. She didn't dare to finish her sentence. However, these few were enough to deal a blow to Chung Mingyue. Her body swayed a little, but she couldn't resist the hesitation in her heart. It's over, it's over. This was the only feeling Chung Mingyue had at this moment. She, Chung Mingyue, was truly finished in the Central Plains pugilistic world. Chapter 1383. Chung Mingyue was sick. This time, she wasn't pretending to be pitiful to gain sympathy. She was really sick. She hadn't been sick for a long time. Chung Mingyue, who was lying on the bed in a daze because of the fever, thought in a daze. She was born as a proud daughter of heaven. Her father treated her like a pearl and raised her. He was very nervous about the slightest disturbance. How could he give her a chance to fall sick? Later, she became the disciple of the #1 expert in the martial arts world and the junior sister of the chief of the martial arts world. More people flattered her. She thought of the last time she fell sick. It was a few years ago. It was just a small cold. The servants in the mansion were busy. Her father looked at her tirelessly. He even invited a few famous doctors in the martial arts world. In the martial arts world, who didn't envy her, Fairy Mingyue? But now, Xiaoting came in with a bowl of black medicine. She looked helpless. Young miss, those doctors heard that the master of the Cheng mansion was sick and refused to come over. This is the medicine for typhoid that I bought myself. Please be more particular. When she came in with the bowl of medicine, Cheng Mingyue clearly saw a few red and swollen blisters on Xiaotang's hands. You brewed this medicine yourself? Where are those rough servants? Cheng Mingyue asked angrily. Xiaoting avoided her gaze and said timidly, ever since the master passed away, the servants in the house ran away and ransomed. Now, she didn't finish her sentence, but Cheng Mingyue already knew what she meant. Now there were probably not many people in the Cheng mansion. Cheng Mingyue's expression suddenly calmed down. She took the bowl of medicine and drank it. I know. I don't need anyone to serve me. You can go and rest. Xiaoting left. Cheng Mingyue watched her leave. Xiaoting had been by her side since she was young. She was a servant who served the young miss. Naturally, she had never done any heavy work. Today was probably the first time she brewed medicine. She lay on the bed and looked at the top of the bed with her eyes wide open. Tears finally fell from the corners of her eyes and slowly soaked the pillow. Something big happened in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. At the Martial Arts World Assembly, the current chief of the martial arts world, Zhu Yu, revealed a shocking news. He and the cult master of the devil cult were in love with each other, and were about to get married. I am aware that I am no longer able to assume the position of Wulin Alliance Master, and I would like to ask my fellow Wulin Alliance Masters to choose another Wulin Alliance Master, who is of virtue and prestige. If it was any other day, if someone exposed that they had an affair with the cult master of the devil sect, they would be condemned by the public. However, Zhu Yu had accumulated a lot of prestige, and was highly respected by the people of Wulin. Moreover, his actions were too calm, so calm that no one could criticize his actions. He had fallen in love with the cult leader of the devil cult, and had volunteered not to be the Wulin Union head. What could you do to him? As a result, the martial arts circle convention ended in an extremely strange atmosphere. What was most shocking was that Zhu Yu had actually used his own name to send out invitations to all the martial artists present when the martial arts tournament ended. Wasn't he afraid of triggering a murder case? Many of the martial artists were dumbfounded by Zhu Yu's unusual approach. Yili, I'm sorry. Zhu Yu held Gu Xingyin's hand and apologized. Gu Xingyin turned to look at him. What's there to be sorry about? Zhu Yu looked apologetic. I said that I would give you a lively and grand wedding. However, in the martial arts world of the Central Plains, I'm afraid our wedding won't receive many blessings. Chapter 1384. After all, the martial arts world in the Central Plains had been holding a grudge against the demon sect for a long time, and it was not easy to erase it. Gu Xingyin laughed out loud. I thought you had done something wrong to me. Just this small matter? Marriage is just a matter between two people. How big of an impact would it have on us whether other people give us their blessings or not? Zhu Yu laughed as well. You're right. It doesn't matter if other people give us their blessings or not, we will still grow old together. The location of their wedding was one of Mu Qingfeng's big houses. This was specially requested by Mu Qingfeng. By doing so, he was showing the world that he was not dissatisfied with the marriage between his disciple and the demon sect's leader. In fact, he even approved of it. The number of guests at the wedding was much more than what Zhu Yu had expected. First of all, there was the demon sect. Although the members of the demon sect were not satisfied with the fact that their leader's wedding was not held at the demon sect's headquarters, they still sent a large group of people to attend their leader's wedding. Just the disciples of the demonic sect alone were enough to cause a great commotion. Not to mention the people from the martial arts world who had accepted Zhu Yu's invitation. Initially, they were all in a wait-and-see mode. However, after a while, they thought that it would be good to take this opportunity to see the legendary demon sect. Besides, there would definitely be many people who would not go because of their status. If they went, wouldn't they be able to impress Mu Qingfeng and hero Zhu Yu? Perhaps there were other reasons too. All in all, when the wedding started, The tables and chairs prepared by Zhu Yu were almost not enough. Fortunately, there were backups. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing. However, Zhu Yu was happy. No matter what these people were thinking, at least on the surface, they were here to give their blessings to him and Yi Li. Look, there are so many people giving us their blessings when we are together. He whispered in Gu Xingyin's ear. Gu Xingyin looked at the man who was lying through his teeth. She thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Those people were here to attend the wedding. Weren't they here to give their blessings? As for those who came for the demon sex leader, they finally saw her in person. The moment they saw Gu Xingyin, they all understood why Alliance leader Zhu Yu liked such a woman. Nonsense. Which man wouldn't like such a beauty? What? You're not moved by her beauty. Bullshit. Usually, if a man said that he was not moved by beauty, it was only because he had someone he loved. Most of the time, it was because that beauty was not beautiful enough to attract him. It was no wonder that the former junior sister of the Wulin Alliance master would be jealous. The female guests present sighed inwardly as they looked at the bride's face, which was even more beautiful than the lights and moonlight. Such beauty was simply every woman's nightmare. Gu Xingyin and Zhu Yu didn't care about what the guests were thinking. They were just devoutly following the ancient ceremony and bowing to the heavens and earth. Then, under the blessings of everyone, they became a true husband and wife. The moonlight tonight was very beautiful, but to Zhu Yu, everything in front of him had lost its color and luster. In his eyes, there was only the person smiling sweetly in front of him. He looked at Gu Xingyin with satisfaction, his face full of tenderness and joy. Yi Li, I finally have you by my side. Gu Xingyin smiled faintly. Silly, my heart has been firmly tied to your body since a long, long time ago. Continue to update. Please vote, order, read, comment, give tip. Highlight the main points. Tomorrow is the new world. Good night, everyone. Chapter 1385. Cheng Mingyue lay on the bed and vaguely heard the sound of music. A strange feeling rose in her heart. Shouting, is there someone holding a wedding outside? She had been lying in bed for a long time, and her illness was not getting better. For such a long time, the only person she had seen was Xiaotang. Those ungrateful people saw that she was in dire straits, and all of them wanted to climb up the social ladder. Thinking of this, Cheng Mingyue was angry. As for Xiaotang, who had always stayed by his side and never abandoned him, his heart was filled with gratitude. Xiaotang heard her words and showed a complicated expression. She lowered her head and did not speak. Seeing her like this, Cheng Mingyue was even more certain that something was going on. She said, Xiaotang, tell me the truth. What's going on? Xiaotang lowered her head and said quickly, Miss, today is Hero Zhu Yu's big day. Zhu Yu's big day? Cheng Mingyue was in a daze for a moment before she realized that Zhu Yu was her senior brother. He was actually getting married? Cheng Mingyue suddenly thought of something and asked sternly, Who is the bride? When she said this, a beautiful face flashed in her mind, but she quickly rejected it. It was impossible. Senior brother was the chief of Wulin. How could he marry someone from the devil sect? Hero Zhu Yu's new wife. She is the leader of the devil sect. Xiaotang's voice broke her imagination. Hearing the words leader of the devil sect, Cheng Mingyue suddenly became agitated. Who did you say his bride is? The leader of the devil sect? How is that possible? Senior brother is the chief of Wulin. He can't marry someone who is the leader of the devil sect. Xiaotang said softly, but Hero Zhu Yu is no longer the chief of Wulin. What did you say? Cheng Mingyue turned her head and looked at Xiaotang. Say it again? Xiaotang lowered her head and said softly, Hero Zhu Yu said himself that he is no longer capable of being the chief of Wulin. He has already resigned. Now the Wulin is discussing who will take over as the chief of Wulin. The room fell silent for a moment. After a while, a mournful laughter rang out in the dark room. Ha 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 ha, my good senior brother, for her, he even gave up the honor of being the Wulin Alliance's leader. What am I? Then what am I? Cough 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 cough. Xiaotang looked at her worriedly and comforted her softly. Miss, please take care of yourself. You. A bowl of medicine came crashing down and landed right on Xiaotang's forehead. Get lost. Get lost, all of you. A stinging sensation rose from the place where he was hit. He didn't know if his skin was broken. Xiao Tang lowered her eyes and did not say anything. She picked up the bowl on the ground and left. Cheng Mingyue spent the whole afternoon staring at the ceiling in a daze. She didn't know what she was thinking. She hadn't looked in the mirror for a long time, because she was afraid of seeing her hideous appearance. "Young miss, this servant has made some porridge. Would you like to have some?" Xiao Tang pushed open the door and walked in with a tray. Cheng Mingyue turned to look at her. This servant girl was the only one who was still loyal to her after her downfall. Cheng Mingyue thought for a moment, and reached out to take the porridge from Xiao Tang's hands. She picked up the spoon and drank 2 mouthfuls. There was minced meat in the porridge. It was obvious that it was stewed with care. It tasted fresh and fragrant. Cheng Mingyue smiled at Xiao Tang and said, "Xiao Tang, thank you so much for all this time." Xiao Tang lowered her eyes and did not say anything. Cheng Mingyue wanted to say something, but she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Chapter 1386. Cheng Mingyue no longer had the strength to hold the bowl of porridge in her hand. The white and sticky porridge spilled onto the blanket. If it was any other time, Xiao Tang would have quickly gotten up to wipe it off. But right now she just stood there and watched, not moving at all. Cheng Mingyue felt a sharp pain in her stomach, as if there were countless sharp weapons twisting inside. She raised her head with cold sweat, and looked in disbelief at Xiao Tang, who was quietly standing at the side with her head bowed. "You poisoned me?" Xiao Tang did not make a sound, nor did she deny it. Dark red blood flowed down from the corner of Cheng Mingyue's mouth. She did not use her hand to wipe it away, because there was no end to it. She just stared at Xiao Tang and asked, "Why?" She thought that even if she fell into such a situation, there would still be someone by her side who would not leave her. She even thought that when her body was better, she would sell this residence and take Xiao Tang to live somewhere else. However, no matter how much she thought about it, she would never have thought that Xiao Tang would actually poison her. "Why?" Xiao Tang raised her head. Cheng Mingyue saw that her eyes were deathly still. These days, there was no one to take care of Father Cheng. The servants either ran away or left. In the end, there was only this servant left. Xiao Tang stretched out her hand for Cheng Mingyue to see. Cheng Mingyue saw that her fair palm was full of potholes and bruises, and even broken skin. Someone once asked Xiao Tang to leave with them. Xiao Tang could not bear to see young miss lying in bed alone without anyone to take care of you. So Xiao Tang did not go with them. "Look at these hands. This servant has to cook for you, and wipe you down every day. I also have to worry about people with bad intentions coming to rob this residence. During the day, I have to clean up the trash and discarded items in this residence. But what did Xiao Tang get in return? It was you who beat and scolded me." Xiao Tang still had a calm expression. In Cheng Mingyue's eyes, this expression was even more terrifying than a face full of anger. A person with no desires was often the most terrifying. Cheng Mingyue felt her body gradually losing strength. Her mind was already a bit dizzy. She showed a smile, and tried to make herself seem more sincere. "Xiao Tang, I know I was wrong. I will definitely treat you well in the future. Can you give me the antidote first?" Xiao Tang raised her head and suddenly showed a smile. "No, there is no antidote for this. Young miss, you can rest in peace." Cheng Mingyue's eyes widened as the pain in her abdomen reached its limit. She couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood and fell down powerlessly. Xiao Tang looked at this scene coldly. She walked forward and adjusted Cheng Mingyue's posture before tucking her in. From afar, Cheng Mingyue looked as though she had fallen asleep. After that, she turned around and left the room without hesitation. When Gu Xingyin received the system's message, it was at an unspeakable moment. Zhu Yu gasped when she saw how agitated she was. "What's wrong with you?" He bit Gu Xingyin's ear as if punishing her. Gu Xingyin shook his head, and his arms tightened around her neck to make himself close to her. "It's all right." Feeling her enthusiasm, Zhu Yu curled the corners of his mouth and bent down. It was the wedding night, the time when the mandarin ducks intertwined their necks. Gu Xingyin threw those irrelevant things to the back of her mind and concentrated on enjoying the passion brought by her lover. The red candles in the bridal chamber burned until dawn. Chapter 1387. When Gu Xingyin woke up in the morning, she saw that Zhu Yu was already awake. He was propping himself up and playing with a strand of her hair. "How are you feeling?" He knew that he had been a little reckless last night. He did not know if he had hurt her. Gu Xingyin shook her head. Zhu Yu sat up and placed Gu Xingyin's head on his thigh. He slowly combed her smooth black hair. "I have already told my master that I will go to the demon sect with you tomorrow." Gu Xingyin closed her eyes comfortably. "Are you in such a hurry?" Zhu Yu smiled. "Of course. I am still waiting for you to give me a grand wedding and marry me as your wife." Gu Xingyin opened her eyes and stared at the man on top of her. "Are you serious?" Zhu Yu leaned over and kissed her gently on her ear. "Of course it's true." Gu Xingyin smiled. "Okay." She knew what Zhu Yu meant. As the leader of the demon sect, she had gone to the Central Plains to hold a wedding. Although many disciples of the demon sect attended the wedding, they were not convinced. Zhu Yu was doing this for her sake. What else could she ask for after having such a husband? Zhu Yu and Gu Xingyin stayed together for a lifetime. After they got married, they spent most of their time at Mount Wudu. It was not that no one had ever asked Zhu Yu to come back and be the leader of the Wulin Alliance, but Zhu Yu refused. Perhaps power was something extremely important to many men in this world. However, in his eyes, it could not be compared to a dish cooked by Yi Li. Zhu Yu left the world a little earlier than Gu Xingyin. When he left, his eyes were filled with guilt. "I am sorry, Yi Li. I should have held on for a little longer." He did not want to leave this world so early. If he left, Yi Li would be left alone in this world. The dead would end everything, but the one who was still alive was often the one who suffered the most. Gu Xingyin held his hand and smiled gently. "It is okay. We will meet again soon. Zhu Yu, we will be together forever." Zhu Yu closed his eyes reluctantly. Gu Xingyin personally buried him on Mount Wudu, a place she had chosen long ago. When she was burying Zhu Yu, she said to the disciple beside her, "After I leave a place for me here." She pointed at a place not far from Zhu Yu's grave. When the disciple heard this, a sad expression appeared on his face, but he nodded and didn't say anything. He knew how deep his master's relationship with Senior Zhu Yu was. Senior Zhu Yu's departure had most likely taken his master's life with her. Sure enough, from that day onwards, Gu Xingyin, who had always been in good health, began to deteriorate rapidly. Within a short span of 10 days, she was already unable to get out of bed. She looked at the sad appearance of the disciple beside the bed, and only smiled gently and told him not to be sad. She didn't have any regrets, nor did she have any reluctance. Just like what that disciple had thought, she should have left when Zhu Yu left. She closed her eyes peacefully. When she opened her eyes again, she was already back in the pure white space. Gu Xingyin secretly felt the power in her body, and a satisfied smile appeared on her face. Her body was simply like a perfect vessel. No matter how much spiritual energy had been boosted by the laws of the world, her body was like a bottomless pit that would devour all this energy and turn it into her own. Let's go to the next mission world. She couldn't wait to see the world outside this space. Finishing sprinkling flowers carat o carat. Chapter 1388. This was a very quiet space. It was very dark and very quiet. Even the wind did not dare to disturb this place. A black figure stood quietly in this dark space. She wore a thick black cloak, and a large hood hid her entire face in the shadows. Outside the wide black sleeve of her right hand, there was a hand wearing a black hood, holding a huge black sickle. The sickle was also pure black, as if any light between heaven and earth would be swallowed by the darkness when it fell on its body, not refracting any trace of light. Every time this sickle appeared, it symbolized death. Its master was the Grim Reaper of the underworld. At this moment, Gu Xingyin was looking up at the strange blood moon in the sky. System transmit the plot. Soon, the massive plot of the world directly entered her mind. Gu Xingyin face-bombed. Ever since her soul became strong enough, the system had become not gentle at all in certain aspects. For example, during memory transfer, she still remembered that in the beginning, every time the memory was transferred, the system would be very gentle and slow, and would very considerately ask her if she felt uncomfortable. But now it was simply and crudely packaged and transmitted all at once. Even if her divine soul was strong enough to not suffer any damage, she would still be stunned, okay? However, it was only for a moment. To Gu Xingyin, the mission was the most important thing. She began to slowly organize the plot. The Grim Reaper of this world would come to everyone's side when they were about to die and bring their souls to the underworld. Then he would send them back to the afterlife or to some other end. When most people knew that they were about to die, they might feel fear, relief, or unwillingness. However, in the face of fate, no one could escape. Even the Grim Reaper was only doing her job. She may be able to force a person who was supposed to be dead to stay in this world, but the price she would have to pay was not something she could afford. Logically speaking, in this world, the original owner was the Grim Reaper. Furthermore, this was a modern world. Basically, the original owner was dealing with humans. Then, why did Gu Xingyin come to this world? Gu Xingyin saw the answer. This answer. Gu Xingyin was silent for a while before asking with uncertainty, "System, are you sure you're not joking?" As a deity, he was actually killed by a human woman. That human woman came from a wealthy family. She didn't have to do anything, and her wealth was more than enough for her to spend in 10 lifetimes. Such a person would naturally like to find some excitement in his life. She had been to things like bungee jumping, diving, and even the North Pole. These things could only give her a sense of excitement for a while. And then she would start to feel that the world was really boring. Until she knew about the existence of the Grim Reaper. A terrifying thought surfaced in her mind: God slaying. Just thinking about it made her so excited that she couldn't sleep. She began a long preparation. And the Grim Reaper was completely unaware of all of this. That crazy woman had caught an innocent passerby and shot him to death. Then, the Grim Reaper sensed that there was a soul in need of guidance and rushed over. He fell right into the woman's trap. Chapter 1389. After Gu Xingyin finished reading the story of this world, she felt that it was all a bit ridiculous. Was there really such a crazy person in this world? Was there really someone in this world who could kill a god? The system gave her an answer. Gu Xingyin looked at the pile of information that suddenly appeared in her mind. There were all sorts of crazy people in it. She took a deep breath and said, "I understand." As for killing a god, although it sounded ridiculous, it was undeniable that that woman did it. Extracting skills. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining perfect acting skills. Gu Xingyin. She didn't say anything. Instead, she immediately pulled out the life and death record of the supporting female lead, He Qing. When she saw it, her eyes widened. Are you kidding me? A lifetime of riches and honor, and a lifespan of 80? The system nodded heavily. Host, you didn't make a mistake. Gu Xingyin didn't understand. How could someone like her have such a good life? She started flipping through He Qing's records and found the reason. It turned out that in her previous life, He Qing was a world-famous philanthropist. However, her ending wasn't very good. She was betrayed by her husband. Her only child was kidnapped and killed by someone who hated her. She spent her last years alone. When she reincarnated, the Lord of the Underworld asked her what she wanted because she had a lot of merit on her. He Qing laughed and said, "If there's a next life, I want to be a carefree person. Also, I don't want to be a good person anymore." Even if He Qing did evil in this life, she would pay for it in the next life. The merit she had accumulated in her previous life was enough for her to live a lifetime of riches and honor. Gu Xingyin closed the record book in her hand and asked, "Can't I ignore the records in this record book and deal with He Qing?" The system nodded. "Yes, host. Also, even if you deal with her, unless you do it directly, you might not get the result you want. However, if you do it directly, it will go against the Grim Reaper's professional ethics." Gu Xingyin had never received such a depressing task. So what you're saying is that I can't do anything to her, and I still have to guard against her attacking me? Gu Xingyin felt as if there were several mythical beasts living in her heart. The system replied, "That's right. Gu Xingyin. That He Qing is really something. I'm so angry, but I still have to maintain my smile. No, my indifference." The Grim Reaper had no emotions, so she would always have only one expression, an expressionless face. At this time, the record book in Gu Xingyin's left hand suddenly flashed with a white light. This meant that a new soul was about to appear, or had already appeared. Gu Xingyin had something to do. Let's go. Her figure blurred in an instant and disappeared from this space in the blink of an eye. This was a hospital. Gu Xingyin slowly walked in from the main entrance. The entire hospital hall was filled with people, but no one could see this person who was dressed differently. Gu Xingyin was not afraid of being seen. The living could not see the Grim Reaper. Only those who were about to die could see her. And to the dying, she had no need to hide. She walked straight into a ward. Compared to the hustle and bustle downstairs, this place was very quiet and the environment was very good. There was only one patient in the entire ward. Obviously, this person's family was very well off. Chapter 1390. This was a man with a thin face, about 40 years old. Judging from his neatly trimmed nails and neat appearance, he was well taken care of even in the hospital. Now there was an oxygen tube at the tip of his nose. He looked at the light on the ceiling quietly. It was very quiet in the ward. There was no one else here. Gu Xingyin floated in. That's right, from a human's point of view, her feet didn't move. Instead, she glided in parallel, and came directly in front of the man. She looked down at the man in front of her. The other party obviously saw her. Gu Xingyin saw the look of horror on his face at a glance. Any normal person would be scared when they suddenly saw such a strangely dressed person by their bedside. Don't be afraid. I'm here to guide you. A cold voice sounded in the man's mind. Who are you? The man felt strange after he asked. Because he didn't speak. As early as half a month ago, he couldn't speak anymore. The sentence just now was just a thought in his mind. However, he clearly made a sound and communicated with the strange person in front of him. The man looked at Gu Xingyin's appearance and the very unique sickle in her hand. Suddenly he thought of something. His pale face became even paler. He thought that he already knew who the other party was. Am I dying? He asked softly. What answered him was still the same cold voice. The living can't see me. After knowing Gu Xingyin's identity, the man calmed down. He thought for a moment and asked, How long do I have? Gu Xingyin glanced at the record book in her hand. 10 minutes. The man's face showed a relieved expression. He asked, I don't have any strength now, but I want to see my daughter before I die. Can you press the call bell for me? As soon as he said this, he suddenly felt as if something cold had entered his body. His body, which had been weak since he fell ill, was suddenly full of strength. It reminded him of a long time ago when he was very healthy. A healthy person would never understand such a feeling. At that moment, the man even had the urge to cry. He got up on his own and pulled out the oxygen tube at the tip of his nose. There were only 10 minutes left. He didn't care about these things anymore. The man smiled at Gu Xingyin, then turned to press the call button beside the bed. The nurse quickly walked in. The man looked at her. She didn't even care about the Grim Reaper standing beside her. Instead, she looked at him in surprise. Mr. Yuan, why did you pull out the oxygen tube? Also, you look good today. The nurse suddenly stopped talking halfway through her sentence. She glanced at the man who was half sitting on the bed with a rare trace of red on his cheeks. Suddenly, a wave of bitterness rushed to the tip of her nose. She was very clear about Mr. Hara's condition. It was impossible for him to suddenly get better, unless he was experiencing terminal lucidity. The man had been very quiet. Suddenly he said, Is Xiaoling in the hospital? I want to see her. He divorced his wife 7 years ago, and their only daughter, Xiaoling, was awarded to him. Chapter 1391. The nurse nodded and said, Xiaoling has been accompanying you. She went downstairs to buy fruits for you. Just as the nurse finished speaking, a high school girl with a ponytail walked in. She was both surprised and happy to see the man sitting on the bed. She pounced on the bed and said, Dad, you're awake? The man smiled and nodded. He reached out and touched his daughter's long black hair. Xiaoling has lost weight recently. Xiaoling used to be impatient with such nagging until her father was hospitalized. He was in a coma more than he was awake, so he didn't have the energy to discipline her anymore. Only after her father got sick did Xiaoling realize that being nagged by her father was a kind of happiness. She smiled and nodded. When Dad recovers, I'll make braised pork shoulder and stew old hen soup for Xiaoling. I'll make Xiaoling fat again. The man smiled and didn't say anything. He suddenly asked, "Have you been to see your mother recently?" Xiaoling's face fell. She has a family and a child now. Why would I be in her way? It was obvious that she didn't have a good relationship with her birth mother. The man was anxious. His parents had passed away early, and he didn't have any siblings. If he left just like that, Xiaoling would definitely be with her mother. He advised. After all, she's your mother. I think she's always missed you. Xiaoling, you can't be willful in the future. Xiaoling blinked and looked at him. I have Dad. Dad dotes on me. Mom has a family and a child. Dad only has me. The man almost burst into tears when she said that. He suppressed his bitterness and looked at his daughter. Xiaoling, be good. Dad can't always be with you. His expression was too obvious, and the teenage girl seemed to have realized something. Her eyes turned red. No. Dad will always be with Xiaoling. I don't want to find Mom. I want Dad. She hugged the man's waist tightly, as if the man wouldn't leave her like this. Gu Xingyin watched the scene calmly. There were only 3 minutes left. The nurse couldn't help crying. Only the man still looked calm. He gently stroked his daughter's head, his eyes filled with reluctance. Xiaoling, no matter where I am, I will always be watching over you. The daughter in his arms had already lost her voice from crying. She only knew how to hug his waist and shake her head continuously. It was as if she wouldn't be able to hear her father's words, and wouldn't have to accept such an outcome. The nurse suddenly came forward and said, Mr. Yuan, I'll give you another examination now. She knew it was futile, but she still wanted to do something. The man shook his head and looked at the nurse. I know my own body. There's no need to trouble yourself. When he said this, his expression was very calm, as if what he was about to face was not that difficult to accept. 1.5 minutes left. The man began to find it difficult to breathe. He tried his best to make himself look fine and said to the daughter in his arms, Xiaoling, you have to listen to Daddy. Don't be willful in the future. Go to Mommy and listen to her. Also, in the cupboard in your room, there are things that Dad left for you. You have to keep them well, and don't let others know about them easily. His consciousness was starting to blur. In the end, he looked at his daughter in his arms and said his last words in this world. Daddy loves you. Chapter 1392. Gu Xingyin stood in the room and watched as the girl hugged her father's lifeless body, and cried until she was out of breath. Beside her stood a man who looked exactly like the man on the hospital bed. It was Mr. Yuan's soul. At this moment, the man who had been holding back his tears, looked at his daughter and cried miserably with red eyes. Gu Xingyin gave him some time to take one last look at this world. The man stayed in the ward and watched as his daughter hugged his stiff body tightly and refused to let go. In the end, she was forcefully pulled away by the hospital staff. It's time to go, Gu Xingyin said coldly. The man wanted to stay a little longer, but there seemed to be some kind of attraction on the god of death in front of him, which made him involuntarily follow her forward. Sensing the man's resistance, Gu Xingyin said coldly, Human, you're dead now. The human world has nothing to do with you anymore. Even if you stand in front of your daughter now, she can't see you. The man's eyes were still red, but his tears had stopped. He said bitterly, It's okay if Xiaoling can't see me. I just want to see her more. Gu Xingyin's reply was to raise the sickle in her hand high and slash at the sky. In the man's eyes, it was like a scene from a fantasy movie. The empty sky was cut open by the sickle, and a gray door of light opened in front of the two people, a god of death and a ghost. He followed Gu Xingyin into the door. When he stepped through the door, he seemed to have sensed something and turned around to look behind him. But it was only a glance. In the next second, he was sucked into the gray door by a huge attraction. Gu Xingyin glanced at the man who had become expressionless after entering the underworld and said, Follow me. The man obediently followed her and walked forward, completely without the previous tangled look. This was the underworld. As long as a mortal's soul entered the underworld, All of its emotions and desires would be purified, and it would become a brand new soul. After that, the gods in the underworld would arrange the next reincarnation according to the merits of their previous lives. Gu Xingyin brought him to a place where many souls like this man were standing. After bringing him here, the death god wouldn't be in charge of the rest. The Grim Reaper was only responsible for bringing souls into the underworld. As for reincarnation and the like, there were naturally other gods in charge. She flipped through the record book. In the next few days, there were no souls that she needed to be responsible for. Gu Xingyin closed the thing in his hand and sat down under a red maple tree in the underworld in a daze. She didn't know what to do. The Grim Reaper did not have human emotions and did not need to rest. Her only job was to guide the dead. When the Grim Reaper had nothing to do for the time being, he would sit under the red maple tree and stare blankly. The red maple tree was a plant that belonged to the underworld. From the roots to the branches to the leaves, everything was as red as blood. In this dark underworld, the red maple tree was the brightest color. Gu Xingyin soon felt bored. Because the Grim Reaper did not need to cultivate. It would be fine if she cultivated, but she would really sit here for an entire day. Chapter 1393. She felt that this wouldn't do. In the original plot, it only mentioned that the supporting female lead He Qing killed a god, but it didn't mention in detail how she killed a god. Although she couldn't do anything to her. She couldn't just sit there and wait for death. System, I want to meet this He Qing. Gu Xingyin said. Her figure flashed, and she disappeared from the red maple tree. Gu Xingyin once again came to the human world. It was night time, and many office workers had finished their day's work and returned home to rest. Of course, there were also many young men and women who started their rich nightlife. He Qing belonged to the latter. She had money and time. The only thing she was worried about was how to play tonight, and how to spend money tomorrow. Gu Xingyin came to the entrance of a famous bar in the city. This bar was called a Crazy Night. It wasn't famous because of its atmosphere, but because of its chaos. Such a place, logically speaking, should have been closed down after the country's crackdown. But it wasn't. It was said that it had a strong backing, strong enough to ignore certain things. Gu Xingyin was still dressed the same way. Everyone ignored her, so she didn't feel burdened. It was indeed chaotic inside. Gu Xingyin stood quietly and looked at the stage where a few seductive women were performing a striptease. Below, many men were holding their female partners in their arms, but their eyes were lingering on the people on the stage. The lighting here was very dim, and the environment was very ambiguous. It was very suitable for doing certain things. But the dim environment didn't affect Gu Xingyin at all. She could clearly see that in a corner less than 2 meters away from her, a couple couldn't help but start a good show. In the entire hall, there were many men and women who couldn't wait to get a room. Gu Xingyin looked at all of this indifferently. Those erotic scenes were like wood in her eyes. They couldn't stir her heart at all. She was looking for her target. Found it. That woman was on the other side of the sofa. She was hugging an underage girl in her arms, and a very handsome and mature man was pouring wine for her. Gu Xingyin sized up He Qing carefully. She wasn't particularly beautiful, but she was very pleasing to the eye. Under the dim light, her exquisite and enchanting makeup made her look extremely seductive. Gu Xingyin clearly saw that when He Qing tilted her head back and downed the wine in her glass, the man sitting beside her swallowed his saliva. Clearly he was aroused. He Qing naturally noticed it. She looked at the man with her charming eyes. Her red lips curled up, and she smiled slowly. You want to take me? Such a straightforward and vulgar conversation did not arouse the disgust of men. On the contrary, under such circumstances, it was easier to arouse their adrenaline. The man couldn't take his eyes off the woman. He nodded and said in a low voice, "Yes, I want you." In the next second, a glass of red wine was poured on his head. The man met He Qing's cold gaze. "Can't you see that I already have a little cutie? Get lost." A trace of anger flashed across the man's face, but he obviously knew He Qing's identity and was very afraid of her. In the end, he just snorted and left. As for He Qing, she lowered her head and looked at the beautiful young man in her arms. Her expression became as gentle as water. Gu Xingyin could clearly see that although the young man tried his best to smile, a trace of fear flashed across his eyes. Gu Xingyin. This woman was indeed a lunatic. Chapter 1394. Gu Xingyin lowered his head and thought about something. Then he saw He Qing frowning and looking straight at him. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. She was sure that there was nothing in her direction. System, are you sure that the mission target cannot see the Grim Reaper? The system said. Yes, only a dying person can see the Grim Reaper. Gu Xingyin felt that something was amiss. Could it be a coincidence? He Qing also felt that something was amiss. She felt that there was a gloomy and cold aura around her today. But she looked around and did not see anything. Could it be an illusion? She frowned and made a mental note of this. Seeing that He Qing had brought the beautiful young man into a room, Gu Xingyin, who had no interest in watching a live performance, did not follow them. She found the rooftop of a large building and slowly sat down to enjoy the night breeze. She did see that He Qing's body was surrounded by a faint layer of golden light. Gu Xingyin was very familiar with this golden light. It was the golden light of merit. This was the golden light of merit that He Qing had done in her previous life. It had been protecting her in this life. Thinking of this, she had a headache. Based on the amount of merit on He Qing, she would definitely have a smooth sailing life in this life. Even if she did something bad in this life, she would have to pay for it in her next life. She could not attack her at all. The best defense was offense. But this time, Gu Xingyin could only defend. She could only let the system watch He Qing's every move to prevent her from having any chance to attack her. Looking at the bustling city lights in the distance, Gu Xingyin's heart suddenly opened up. The system was puzzled. Host, you've thought it through? Gu Xingyin smiled. But this smile was hidden under the large cloak. Even the system did not see it. So what? I can't attack her, so I'll just wait. A mortal's lifespan is only a few decades. So what if I hide from her for a few decades? As long as I can keep myself alive for the next few decades, I'll have completed the mission, right? If the system knew that emoji packs existed in this world, it would look like this. Oh. So you can think of it this way. My host is really smart. Gu Xingyin didn't say anything else. She said it so casually, but she felt that things weren't that simple. Otherwise, in the original plot, how could He Qing, who couldn't see the existence of the Grim Reaper, kill the Grim Reaper? Are you the Grim Reaper? A young but excited voice came from behind Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin turned around and looked at the little boy who had appeared behind her in surprise. He was probably 7 or 8 years old. He was wearing a white shirt and a small suit. He was so handsome that he looked like a little prince in a fairy tale. At this moment, the young prince was looking at a person in a black cloak not far away. This person's appearance was exactly the same as the Grim Reaper in the myths. Gu Xingyin was surprised. You can see me? At the same time, she asked the system, what's going on? The moment she saw the little boy, she subconsciously flipped through the record book in her hand. But there were no relevant records. Her lover was not recorded in the record book. The little boy tilted his head and looked at her. He felt that this person who looked like the Grim Reaper looked very familiar. He couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. Why can't I see you? Chapter 10. She would know whether she had advanced or not by this afternoon. It was up to the heavens. Good night, everyone. 3. Chapter 1395. Gu Xingyin looked at the little boy in front of her and suddenly said, Don't come over. The little boy obediently stood still and did not move. Gu Xingyin carefully looked at his face and didn't find any death aura. In other words, he was different from those people who could see her. Those people could only see death gods like her because they were about to die, but the boy in front of her wasn't like that. While the system was looking for the reason for this situation, Gu Xingyin was also flipping through the death god's tens of thousands of years of memories. Finally, she found a possibility in a corner. Heaven's Eye. There was a group of people who were born with yin and yang eyes, and could see ghosts and gods. Their eyes were called Heaven's Eye. People who had Heaven's Eye were good seedlings to cultivate Taoist magic. But in this era, Taoist magic was declining, so not many people paid attention to this. As for why his name wasn't in the record book, the system couldn't explain it. Gu Xingyin couldn't find any precedent. She looked at the boy and suddenly asked, "What's your name?" The little boy saw the mysterious death god talking to him and happily answered her. "My name is Qiao Jihe." Qiao Jihe looked at the person in front of him and felt very strange. He didn't know if the person in front of him was the legendary death god. Her appearance was exactly the same as the death god described in the book, but the book said that the death god was evil and terrifying. But he didn't feel any of this from this death god sister. He felt that this death god sister was very close. Gu Xingyin looked at the little boy who was looking at her with his grape-like eyes, and her mood softened. "What are you looking at?" she asked in a low voice. Qiao Jihe stood there and seemed to be very embarrassed, but the desire in his eyes was very obvious. "Death god sister, can I touch your scythe?" His eyes were shining as he looked at the scythe in Gu Xingyin's right hand. It was really cool. Gu Xingyin casually said, "You can, but this is a magic tool from the underworld. Normal people can't touch it." Before she could finish her words, she saw Qiao Jihe happily place his hand on her sickle. Gu Xingyin, "System, can you come out and explain?" After a while the system said, "Host, this is beyond the scope of your authority." Gu Xingyin chuckled. One day, she would know everything that she wanted to know. "Young master." A terrified voice came from behind. Gu Xingyin and Qiao Jihe turned their heads at the same time. A young man in a suit was looking at them with a face full of fear. In his eyes, his young master was standing very close to the edge of the rooftop, and was even stretching out his hand to look outside. It was simply too dangerous. The young man in charge of Qiao Jihe was so scared that his heart almost jumped out. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and knew what he was thinking. She suddenly said in a low voice, "My existence is a little secret between us. Little Crane, don't tell anyone, okay?" Children loved these little secret games the most. Qiao Jihe nodded with a face full of excitement. "Yes. Little Crane will definitely not tell anyone. Daddy and Mommy won't tell either." "Young master, what are you talking about here alone?" The young man rushed over and didn't see Gu Xingyin standing at the side. He was talking endlessly with a face full of fear. Chapter 1396. Qiao Jihe turned around and glanced at Gu Xingyin, feeling very strange in his heart. Sister Death was here, but Brother Ahao couldn't see her? He thought of his promise with Gu Xingyin, so he pursed his lips tightly and shook his head without saying anything. The young man called Ahao didn't ask any more questions. He just held his hand and walked back. "Sir and Madam are worried sick. Let's go back quickly." Qiao Jihe was led by Ahao as he walked back. Gu Xingyin looked at him and suddenly waved her hand, making a goodbye gesture. Qiao Jihe smiled and waved back. Then he saw the other party suddenly stand up. A pair of huge black wings stretched out from her back. She jumped and disappeared into the night sky. Qiao Jihe's eyes widened. His eyes were full of splendor. That was really too cool. Then he was carried by Ahao. "Young master, the rooftop is not fun at all. It's very dangerous. In the future, you can't come here alone anymore." Gu Xingyin didn't actually leave. She just found a place where Qiao Jihe couldn't see and then quietly followed. She saw Qiao Jihe being led by the young man called Ahao to a magnificent hall. There seemed to be a banquet being held inside. A well-dressed couple hurried over when they saw Qiao Jihe. Their expressions were filled with anxiety. They were Qiao Jihe's parents. She sat on the rooftop of another building far away, looking at the little child, and fell into deep thought. On the other side, Qiao Jihe seemed to be in a daze the whole night. His father sat beside him and poured a glass of juice for his son. "Xiaohe, why don't you look happy at all?" Qiao Jihe raised his head, looking very serious. It was just that he wasn't even 7 years old, and had a very cute baby fat on his face. His serious look made him look even cuter. Father Qiao almost laughed out loud, but seeing his son like this, he held it back. He had to leave some face for the little boy. "Dad, I have a question," Qiao Jihe said. Father Qiao was very patient. "What's wrong with little Crane?" Then he saw his son ask with sparkling eyes, "Is there a Grim Reaper in this world?" Father Qiao, Have you read too many fairy tales? But he certainly couldn't answer like that. Hence, Father Chiao pretended to be deep in thought. When he lowered his head, he saw his son's nervous gaze. He couldn't help but laugh. There's no Grim Reaper. That's all in fairy tales. Everyone's imagination. Although children needed to be coaxed, Father Chiao didn't coax his son. His son's education was very important to him. There were some things that should be told the truth, so he tried his best not to replace it with lies. Xiao Zhihe was a little disappointed. He really wanted to tell his father that he had seen a Grim Reaper tonight. She was like a fairy tale character, wearing a thick black cloak. Her face could not be seen clearly, and she held a huge black scythe in her hand. She was simply very handsome. Moreover, she wasn't as bad as what was written in the books. However, Xiao Zhi remembered the agreement between the two of them, and decided to keep his little secret. He was the only one who could see Sister Death. Chapter 1397. After returning home, Xiao Zhihe was severely taught a lesson by his parents. This lesson was actually that the two of them ignored him for the whole night, and no one said good night to him when he went to bed. And the reason was that Ahao told the two that the young master ran to the rooftop alone, and walked to the edge of the area where there was no railing. God, that was more than 60 floors. The young couple was scared when they heard the news. At first, they thought that their son sneaked away because he was playful, but they didn't expect him to go to such a dangerous place. For this kind of thing, they naturally had to punish him well, so that he would remember it a little. Xiao family couple couldn't punish their son physically. The two of them thought for a long time before coming up with such a method. Thus, the poor little bun Xiao Zhihe was ignored. The young master felt wronged. He sat on the bed alone with his pillow. The curtains of the big floor-to-ceiling window were originally drawn, but he pulled the curtains open, and he could see the garden downstairs. Xiao Zhihe understood why his parents ignored him. Because he didn't listen and ran to such a dangerous place alone. But Death's sister was there. He felt wronged and at a loss. If he didn't see Death's sister, he definitely wouldn't go to such an outside place. But he couldn't tell his parents, because he promised Death's sister that he wouldn't tell anyone else. Even if it was his parents, he couldn't. The little Xiao Zhihe pouted. If only Death's sister was here, he could tell her. What do you want to say to me? A cold voice appeared in his bedroom. Xiao Zhihe blinked and looked at the black figure in front of him. When did Death's sister appear? He had been sitting on the bed the whole time, but in an instant, Sister Death appeared beside his bed. Xiao Zhihe's eyes widened, and he even forgot his sadness. Instead, he looked at Gu Xingyin with a face of surprise. Death's sister, when did you come? Gu Xingyin looked at him and wanted to laugh, but she just said lightly, I sensed that you were calling me, so I came. She stood there and asked again. What do you want to say to me? When she smelled it, Xiao Zhihe remembered his own matter. He pursed his lips and told her what had happened today. Finally, he pouted and said, I know I made Mom and Dad worried. I also apologized, but they still ignored me. At the end of his speech, Gu Xingyin looked at the little man and her eyes turned red. However, she forced herself not to let her tears fall. Xiao Zhihe told himself that his father had said that a man should not cry easily. He had to protect his mother. This kind of sensible and cute child was the most lovable, not to mention that Gu Xingyin was biased towards Xiao Zhihe. She thought for a moment and said, Don't be sad. Your parents will come to say good morning to you tomorrow. Xiao Zhihe's eyes lit up. Really? Gu Xingyin said with certainty, Of course it's true. She had just heard Xiao Zhihe's mother say it herself. The expression on Xiao Zhihe's face relaxed a little, but he still looked a little unhappy. Gu Xingyin looked at his rare appearance. She thought for a moment and had an idea. Little Crane, are you willing to play a game with me? Chapter 1398. Xiao Zhihe's eyes widened as he looked at the scenery below him. This was a beauty he had never imagined. If someone used a telescope to take a picture of the sky at this time, they might be able to see a little boy floating in the sky in a strange posture, looking at the scenery below. It was like a dream. Xiao Zhihe still remembered that after Sister Death asked that question, He did not hesitate to put his hand in her gloved palm. Then he noticed that he was being carried and left the ground. Yes, leave. He looked up and could only see the darkness under the heavy hood. When he looked up a little higher, he could see the beautiful black wings behind Sister Death. He was now in the sky. Every little boy would have a dream about flying when he was young. This was different from sitting on a plane. It was not sitting in a closed cabin, but standing in the air. He could reach out his hand and feel the wind gently caressing his body. He could also look down and see the lights of thousands of homes below him. Xiao Jihe's face was full of amazement. Gu Xingyin looked at him softly and asked, "Do you feel better now?" Xiao Jihe nodded vigorously. He was so excited that his heart was about to jump out. Gu Xingyin took him and slowly soared in the sky. They flew for almost 2 hours. Xiao Jihe never knew that the city he lived in looked like this from above. In the end, the child was sent home by Gu Xingyin. Facing the little prince's eyes, Gu Xingyin ruthlessly refused him. "You should sleep now. Otherwise, Mom and Dad will scold you when they see your dark circles tomorrow." Well, hearing the unquestionable tone in Sister Death's voice, Xiao Jihe could only obediently nod. Then he heard a cold good night by his ear, and the person beside him disappeared. She really is the mysterious Sister Death, Xiao Jihe thought. The next day, when Mother Qiao opened the door of her son's room, she saw 2 big dark circles. Gu Xingyin did not think of this. After experiencing such an exciting night, how many normal people could sleep? Not to mention the 7-year-old Xiao Jihe. Xiao Jihe was worried that he would be scolded by his mother. However, Mrs. Qiao clearly misunderstood. She thought that her son was unable to sleep because he had been taught a lesson last night. For a moment, her heart ached and she blamed herself. She hugged Xiao Jihe and rubbed his heart. Xiao Jihe was carried by his mother with a confused look on his face. Clearly, he did not understand the situation at all. But as a man, he had to take responsibility for his mistakes. That was what Sister Death had told him. Therefore, Xiao Jihe patted her chest and said to her mother that she really knew that she was wrong. She would never do such a dangerous thing again. When Mother Qiao saw that her son still didn't forget to admit his mistake, she felt both bitter and proud. From then on, he doted on his son even more. After playing with Xiao Jihe for a day, Gu Xingyin returned to the underworld. The system told her that He Qing's next plan was to go skiing in the snowy mountains of Shibua. Anyway, this woman's hobby was always adventurous and exciting. Gu Xingyin was not surprised. The last time she went to see He Qing, she didn't find anything out of the ordinary other than having a lot of merit. She slowly relaxed. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.